expensive. We've got new inflation numbers, the highest inflation we've seen.
Eye-popping new inflation numbers showing
inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel.
Ergo, terrible. Food costs up 7.9%. Food at home up 8.6%. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that's the highest since 1981.
And Americans are feeling this.
American concerns, the economy and the inflation are top priorities.
But the question is really, are Americans going to credit Democrats for bringing those prices down?
prices across the country soaring from groceries to cars. And the challenge for President Biden, our chief.
Too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills.
Ground beef prices up 13.5% from a year ago. Are also rising at the pump. Everyone knows that by now. A new record every day.
It feels like everything's going up, and it's only going to get worse.
I get it.
It's only going to get worse.
And with all the bright spots in our economy,
How people feel about their pocketbooks and about their day-to-day life may not be so good.
In this country in nearly 40 years, with prices up 7.5% in the last 12 months.
I get it.
And the White House keeps telling us prices are going to come down. They're going to come down. But that was before the war in Ukraine.
Inflation. And they said basically that Build Back Better and actions by the president will be the things to address inflation.
You're looking at a period now where we can pretty clearly see that 8 and maybe even 9% inflation is on the horizon.
That's why my top priority is getting prices under control.
May not be so good.
I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. That means
It's only going to get worse.
economists
May not be so good.
wages and make Americans poorer.
It's only going to get worse.
Inflation is personal. You may not see it that way now, but you will after this video. The CPI is a lie. It's deceptive, and you are being fooled. The talking heads, the people we look to for an economic outlook, and the powers that be want us to believe that the cost of living is supposed to go up and that this is just the way the world works. We never stop to ask ourselves why. They want us to stay busy doing one thing after another, running from point A to point B, so consumed with what's in front of us that we don't ever quite see the bigger picture. You and me, we all know something's off. Something has changed. If you're like me, living in the city, you know exactly what I mean. But if you don't, let me tell you. Something's off. Something has fundamentally changed. Something's off. You're like living in the city. You know exactly what I mean. Every day, I see hard-working people that can't help but doze off from a long day after work, or bury themselves in their phones looking for that quick escape. How many of these people do you think feel like their future is filled with ambition, inspiration, and hope? The feeling and sentiment around us can serve as a leading indicator to where we are heading on a fundamental level. As a whole, everyone is getting programmed to think more short term. Just think about it. I believe for most people, life beats down into being content with the way things are. You stop being curious. You stop seeking new ideas, and you stop pursuing the things that make you feel alive. It's easier to just consume everything for from junk food to binging Netflix shows to scrolling through meaningless social media posts to fill that empty space. You hate thinking about the past because with every passing year, when it comes to the things that indicate progress, you are falling further and further behind. And you think this is the way it's always going to be. Trying to avoid this pain, you turn to what you already have, family. And that's if you're fortunate. Material possessions you already possess, experiences you've already experienced. But you are only fooling yourself, because deep down inside, when everything is quiet, you know that you are but a mere unfortunate event from all these things just being what they are, a distant memory. This depressing feeling you're having right now is the power that inflation has over you. And if you want to escape that depressing feeling like a champ, smash that like button as fast as you can. Alright, so most people associate inflation with the cost of things going up. But what if it's the money's ability to buy things that's actually going down? Right? Now you ask yourself, how could this be? How come we aren't hearing about this perspective all over the news? Well, sometimes you are. They just like to use fancy terms like quantitative easing, or fancy sentences like there's an increase in the M1/M2 money supply. These terms aren't complicated to understand if you take the time to look it up, but the real power of using these words in this way is that it makes it easier to dehumanize the impact. So if you hear it, and even if you understand it, you feel like it doesn't really matter or hurt anyone. Words are powerful, but numbers? Numbers? They're trickier to finagle. One tool that allows this trickery to happen in regards to numbers and data is the CPI, but there are others. The purpose of the Consumer Price Index is to measure what the cost of living is on average for urban households. Economists, among others, use this number as a meaningful indicator. But meaningful for who? It's about as meaningful to most people as half the things you learned in school. In all seriousness, it holds little to no importance because it's not accurate for you. I want you to close your eyes, assuming you're in a safe place, or assuming you're not watching this at work. Just don't get caught. And imagine 3 completely different families. Okay, you got the picture of the 3 families in your head, right? Now open your eyes. Does your imaginary family look like mine? Probably not. What does a typical family look like anyway? Well, that's the first flaw, isn't it? Are you single? Do you have a 2-member household? What does that mean? A mom and a kid? How about 2 working adults? Or a single father with a child who has special needs? How about a 3 or 4 member household? We all know we live a very unique life. No 2 lives are exactly the same. The second flaw of the CPI is the goods and services that make up what a typical family would buy. Do you splurge on good food like a foodie? Or do you eat like a bodybuilder? Like chicken? Or do you want more eggs, bro? On top of this, the amount and frequency of the good or service that you are consuming is impossible to track in a meaningful way for any household. For example, do you eat salmon twice a week or sushi twice a week? Is sushi even in the calculation? How about bigger items like housing? Housing, whether it's rent or mortgage payments, are not included. Yet this expense is one of the biggest expenses every household will have. So getting inflation numbers without counting housing should tell you how meaningless this number really is. Again, for you. The third flaw of the CPI is the fact they adjust what is counted as a good or service that you need or want. Now this sounds like a well-intentioned component, doesn't it? But how easy is it to tell the story you want if you control all the characters and what they say, and therefore what you, the consumer, think about them? If the established benchmark is constantly being reestablished, then saying that inflation did anything up or down compared to the last measurement is structurally flawed. Now the truth is, you're probably asking yourself, how can something this flawed be taken as gospel? How can we just accept the Fed saying that the goal of having a target of 2% inflation every year is actually a good goal in the first place? Well, that's because you were programmed not to care. You were programmed not to ask why. You were directed to look the other way. With everything on the surface seeming good enough, why does it even matter? The value of my money going down by just 2% or things going up by 2%, how bad could that be? Assuming inflation was just 2% for everybody, which if you remember the 3 flaws we discussed earlier, it's mathematically impossible for this to be the case. An increase of just 2% every year will double the cost of living in just 35 years. That means that $1,000 in 2022 will double by 2057, triple by 2078, and quadruple by 2092. And remember, this is with just a 2% increase. What if the inflation was actually much higher than that? Even the rigged numbers that just came out show that inflation is at 7.5%. They can't even hide the rigged numbers anymore. Now, chances are the majority of you are between 18 and 35 years old. If you are, or you are not, let me know in the comments below. And let me know what is something you normally buy that has been most impacted by inflation. The younger you are, the harder it is to see the cost of things going up in a meaningful way, even if you are somewhat aware of it. Just let this marinate. $1 today roughly buys what 15 cents did back in 1971. That's just 51 years ago. So it's hard to see the impact of this unless you were you now back then. Unless you have been actively investing, these mathematical facts have worked against you, not for you. Inflation is a silent tax that hurts people who are not investing disproportionately compared to people who are actively investing. This isn't about what's fair or not. It's about education. It's about being led the wrong way. Because of this system and the lack of financial education, unelected people have been given the power to artificially control the money supply of the economy. By controlling the money supply, they have been able to manipulate economic collapses to make investors richer. The question we have to ask ourselves, can they do it again and again? How long can the dollar go before it loses the confidence, trust, and respect of its users? I'm not arguing whether our system is bad or good from a moral standpoint, or whether they even have any good options on the table, when it comes to repairing or reforming the current system, because it seems that every option that they could use that keeps the current system alive, meaning the power they have of being able to print money at will, simply just delays the inevitable, that our money will become worthless like every other fiat currency before it. At the end of the day, this is already happening. You are part of the system. You are just on the wrong end of it. With every action, transaction, vote, and click you do, you are participating in the system. I know it's complex, and it's both global and local, so everyone, including me, including you, will get affected by it. We all have a part that we are playing, no matter how big or how small, how active or how passive we choose to be. And yes, I said choose, because after watching this video, it moves from a lack of knowledge to willful blindness if you choose to stay on the losing side of things. You can only blame yourself if you don't take action. If we zoom out, we can clearly see how much our society has changed.
In the backdrop, governments are spending big to keep society afloat.
The fact that the Fed chairman himself said,
Chair Powell previously said this bout of inflation is transitory, but now he's walking back from using that language.
We tend to use it to mean that it won't leave a permanent mark in the form of higher inflation. I think it's
probably a good time to retire that word and try to explain more clearly what we mean.
Should be more alarming than it has been. But then again, history shows us that the masses only react after enough pain has been inflicted upon them. Are you really willing to be in a position that requires mercy from a system with rotating faces? So what has changed? Well, a target inflation rate of 2% is history, and we know that. But the truth is, it never really was 2%. Then they said inflation was transitory. Then now, not even 5 years later, not even 5 years went by, and they said we should probably just retire the word transitory. Our current monetary system is more fragile than we think, but its impact on life as we know it will make what we just went through.
Certainly living with the virus.
Tonight, a COVID surge coast to coast. Broadway canceling more performances.
Amid an outbreak of cases,
Omicron now the most dominant variant, making up 3/4 of cases. It's more sports teams weighing whether to postpone games.
Hospitalizations rising.
Testing lines and new restrictions mounting.
Look like a blip in time. Will the current system, fueled by an infinite amount of dollars that is held together by a handful of people, continue to be the way it works 10, 20, 30 years from now? The answer is no. It won't work this way forever. But the unknown is when this change will happen. Will everyone in the world replace the US dollar and take away its global currency status and replace it with another superpower's currency with the same flaws? Will it be the Chinese yen or the Russian ruble? Well,
Today's opening bells collided. Markets in Russia and Ukraine went into a free fall. The Moscow Stock Exchange fell 30%. The Russian ruble touched a new low. It weakened to 86.93 per dollar.
Doesn't it lower your downside risk to be a part of two systems rather than just one? If that makes sense to you, then watch this next video over here.